recording? It's recording. I keep on thinking back to how boring Pesach used to be when I was a kid. We lived in Tel Aviv, but every year for the holiday we'd go visit my aunt and my cousins in the kibbutz. I was in an awkward in-between age. My cousins were either much older than me or much younger than me, and so during the Seider, which was held in this giant kibbutzi hall, I'd end up being relegated to the end of the table, with all the aunties and the grandmothers who had much more important things to do than talk about what I wanted to talk about, which at 8 years old was usually either dancing or dogs or aliens. Now, let me tell you this, which most of you probably already know. Seders are very long when you're A, too young to drink, or B, have no one to talk to. And then on top of that, of course, was the fact that I didn't get the story. What was the story, or was it? What was the story of the Haggadah? There was a moment where it was almost a story with the Moses and the plagues and all, but then everything very quickly devolved into singing and the questions and the manishtana. And keep in mind, all of this in a hall full of hundreds of people. It didn't make a whole lot of sense as a narrative, and I was usually incredibly bored. Now, my grandmother, of course, would make sure to make faces at me from across the table until I laughed, and I do remember liking the sweet grape juice, some of the songs, and also how every year I was desperately hopeful to be the one to find the afikoman, which I never did, and my cousin always did. After moving to the Netherlands, our Seders changed. We didn't know many Jewish families here, and the ones we did know were rather more religious than we were, and so we'd celebrate at their homes. But the Seders would be these very, very long affairs, especially the before eating part. I was a full-on teenager by the time we held our first Seder at home. My dad took out the hallway door to use as a long table. My mother opened the night by asking everyone, "What does freedom mean to you?" And then we'd all have to answer, which was horribly embarrassing. We'd sing a bit, which was also horribly embarrassing. And then we'd eat, which was marginally better. Then someone would put on The Prince of Egypt on VCR, and the kids would watch it while the grown-ups drank and talked in the other room. I usually went upstairs, logged onto the internet, and chatted to people from Canada. I grew up knowing Seders first as boring, then as tedious, then as embarrassing. It was only after moving out of my parents' home that that vision began to shift. I had a tough time of it that first year, in the usual way. I had to learn how to take care of myself. I fell in love, and that love wasn't returned. I hitchhiked to Ireland and got into some trouble. Returning home for that first Pesach was new to me then, even though the rest was the same. My father took out the hallway door for the table. My mother asked, "What does freedom mean to you?" And all I could think about was how I didn't know how to cook for myself, or tell someone that I was in love with them, or how to be a Jewish person when I was the only Jewish person in that room, visibly so. I saw something in the Haggadah that year that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't a bad story. It was a good instruction manual. It told you, this is how you have this dinner. This is how you set the table. This is what you say. This is how we remember, how we sit together. This is how we turn to each other and ask, "Tell me about yourself. Tell me about what has changed tonight. Tell me about this moment and why it is different from all the others." At the time of writing this, it's been 3 weeks since I've sat next to another person. 3 weeks since I've gotten to touch anyone or hug anyone. I won't see my parents for Pesach this year. I've been crying about this since the moment I realized this, and then every time it happens, I tell myself, "Oh, you're not the only person or the first person in the history of the world calm down, which of course is one of the big lessons of the Haggadah. Life happens in cycles. We do better by learning from the past. The Haggadah is not a story, not in itself. We don't tell a narrative. We don't linger on the life of Moses or the 40 years in the desert. What we do instead is we go over steps. These are the 12 plagues. These are the 4 questions. Here are 13 lessons. These are 6 symbols. These are 4 cups of wine. Here is a list of things to do when shit hits the fan. To me, the Haggadah is a deeply human text, and much less a divine one. It's what we do at 4 in the morning when we can't fall asleep and we need to draw out the pros and cons of a situation. Here's the reasons why I should stay. Here's the reasons why I should go. It's what we do before we go to the supermarket, before we leave the house, before we go into a meeting, before we speak to someone we haven't spoken to in a while, and we want to make sure we say everything we mean to say, that we don't forget. The word afikoman comes from the Greek epikomon, that which comes after. Everything that begins eventually ends. Lest we forget, we start out the night with a reminder that it will end. We take a matzah, we break it, we hide a piece of it. We spend the duration of the Seider with the afikoman at the backs of our minds. Where will it be? Where will we find it? Who will find it? The ending, the thing that comes after. During our Seiders, we make that finish line a joyous thing, because we must. The first to reach it, to find the afikoman, gets the reward. The ending, even of a good thing, and especially of a bad thing, is a sacred moment. Seiders, at the very heart of them, are lessons of endurance. How to sit at one table with your family for hours and come out better for it. How to survive a hardship. How to find the patience to get through it. Whether the thing that we endure is the sweet or the bitter, the gift or the sacrifice, the lesson is the same. Be smart. Keep safe. Remember your lists. Have heart. All things will come to an end. Tell your neighbor what freedom means to you. Listen when they tell you what it means to them. Sei gesund und stark. Wash your hands. Open a window. Chag Sameach.